looks at Israel as a company, okay, that he wants to grow, and he looks at the ROI, and it's the way of he thinks.
It's not a startup. He looks at it as a company, not as a startup.
Right. No, like an enterprise company.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, when I'll finish my role as the Defense and Cyber Cluster Manager, I think that I will be able to say, okay, I made an impact for the ecosystem, right? I created infrastructure that helped a lot of companies grow their businesses faster. I connected them to very important initiatives around the world. So these kind of things that actually it makes it easier for me to work at the public sector, which is not always easy.
Welcome to the autonomous age, where drones map our cities, robots save lives, and underwater vehicles scan the ocean floor. I'm Shai Senior, and this podcast is your front row seat to the real stories behind the machines shaping our future and the people behind them, from the engineers and researchers to the entrepreneurs and investors. So happy to be here today. This episode, I'll be hosting Elinor Yakobson, the Defense and Cyber Cluster Manager in the program of growth in Israel, if I'm saying it right.
It's the National Program for Economic Growth.
Yeah, it will take me a little bit of time to learn how to say that, but it sounds like you're in charge of a very important field in the time that we're living right now and the era that Israel is going through. So if you could start with sharing a little bit about yourself, your background, how did you get to that position?
Wow, long story. So first of all, I'm 41, Tel Avivian, born and raised most of my life. I'm a lawyer. I also have a degree in government and politics and diplomacy and PMP from the Technion. And I've been working in the private sector most of my life, most of my career, mostly in business development in the software industry. In the last position I had before joining the National Program for Economic Growth, I managed a global accelerator in the sports industry. So I worked with a lot of big names such as the NBA, Miami Dolphins, UEFA.
You didn't meet Ronaldo.
I didn't meet Ronaldo. No, I met mostly like the innovation managers, of these teams. It was very interesting. I did that for 4.5 years. And 2 years ago, I joined the public sector. I work at the National Program for Economic Growth. It's the executive body of the Ministry of Economy and the joint organization. I manage there the Defense and Cyber Cluster, which is also Homeland Security, dual use, and space industries. And my goal is to improve those fields economically and, drive growth in Israel for these fields.
So it's more about the attachés, like defense attachés around the world, or who's your exporters of the ideas
Who's
that
the
you're
audience?
working on? Yeah. Who's the audience and who is exporting it to that audience?
Yeah. So first of all, the Ministry of Economy has this very big, target. Okay, it's $1 trillion in exports by 2045, which is in 20 years from now. Now we're about $180 million per year, and I think the Israeli defense export helps a lot in reaching this goal. Okay, right. In the last 3 years, we've had year-over-year growth of the defense export budget. Defense export, we've reached almost $15 billion in 2024. So the audience is the entire defense ecosystem or the cyber ecosystem or space, homeland security ecosystem. What I mostly do is that I drink a lot of coffee with them. So starting from small to medium businesses and startup companies to the three biggest industry companies, Elbit, Rafael, Tasiya Avirit. And I talk a lot with VCs. okay? And it's kind of like a business development role for the state of Israel, okay? But at the end, you want to understand what are the challenges and help them from the government perspective, okay? So the audience is the entire ecosystem, and we try to help the not the startups that go to the innovation authority, because they are, the TRL is very early, but those that are a little bit more grown up, they already try to export, and they work with the economic attaches, not so much with the defense attaches, but more the dual use companies. Defense is a little bit more challenging in those areas, right? Because it's more B2G or G2G.
So it's like you will meet with startups, and then you mentioned the challenges. What are the challenges that they're actually meeting, and how the organization that you're representing is helping them go through those challenges?
Wow, startups have a lot of challenges in those areas. It really depends on which area they're from and who they want to sell, and are they only defense, pure defense companies, or they're dual use companies, because the regulation is very different, and the end customer is very different. So it's varied, and I try to help from government perspectives, the first to open the market for them to different hubs around the world, such as India and the US and Japan, and the countries that want to get to buy what we have.
Right.
If it's technology or like knowledge transfer, it really depends on the country. But on the other hand, I work on regulation changes. Okay, if it's via API, okay, the Department of Export Controls. Don't remember what the AIM stands for. And I also try to build different processes under the Ministry of Economy, and also invest in infrastructure to help those companies go to market faster, and just use infrastructure in Israel that can support their growth faster.
So it's different services that you provide, and are you traveling a lot? I mean, it
I
sounds
travel
like
a lot inside Israel. I've been to Mitzpe Ramon on Thursday. Tomorrow I'm going to Jerusalem. On Tuesday I'll be in Beer Sheva. My work is when I work through three different lenses. It's the regional lens, it's the national lens, and it's the international lens. So around the regional lens, I work with municipalities and cities that have competitive advantage in my areas. So, for example, Mitzpe Ramon around space, and Yerucham around UAVs and drones. Okay, so that's on the regional level, and that's why I travel a lot. I try not to travel a lot internationally. But I've been to Milan. I've been to India. And yeah, I try not to go actually.
Yeah, so actually, we're discussing Mitzpe Ramon as a center for space.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I've saw few people talking about and something new that is evolving in Mitzpe Ramon. I mean, I'm visiting Mitzpe Ramon every time that I want to see the stars and enjoy an empty sky. City that is responsible for the light that is exploding our site. So with the rumors about an ex-American territory that is going to be developed here in Israel, I hope that I'm not sharing governmental secrets, but other people talked about it before me publicly, so I guess I'm not the first one discovering it. What exactly is happening in Mitzpe Ramon, and how many coffees did you drink there?
I actually drink more wine in Mitzpe Ramon than
Okay.
coffee. They have a very good vineyard. It's called Kerem Ramon. But around space, from what I can share, it's happening. A lot has been happening there. So first of all, there is a company called Creation Space. which is a company. The CEO of the company, his name is Roy Naor, and we've been working together for a year and a half now. And he actually moved to Mitzpe Ramon I think a few months ago because he was so happy to stay there and the times that he attended. So Creation Space has a few things that they're doing. They have an accelerator in the space field, but it's for dual application companies. So it's for companies that are have a product in agriculture or tunnel solutions or health or biology, and they have an application for space. Okay, so it's easier to invest in those companies, I think, and the ROI is quicker. So they have an accelerator, and they're opening the third cohort next week. But we invested in an infrastructure there, the Ministry of Economy. We invested almost 15 million shekels to build the space campus in Mitzpe Ramon, which is going to be built in the next 4 years. And it's going to include different infrastructure around Mitzpe Ramon. They already have a few infrastructures around space in Mitzpe Ramon, but they're going to build additional ones. So one of them is a lab, okay, where it's actually in partnership with NVIDIA. And and they're going to build there a very big lab around robotics. And they're going to use the outside, Mitzpe Ramon, the very, איך אומרים סביבות קיצון, very...
radical environmental...
The desert environment, okay, which is very...
representative to...
Yeah, it's very similar to Mars, okay? Right. And they're going to test there a lot of new innovations that can help Israel in this field. And besides that, they're going to open other infrastructures, such as an infrastructure with the Kerem Ramon Vineyard around agriculture and space. And they're going to open their space academy and a few other infrastructures. So it's going to bring a lot of strength to Mitzpe Ramon. I think it's going to bring a lot of, ongoing interest, and I'm not sure it's going to bring a lot of new employees, right, from Mitzpe Ramon, because it's not a huge factory that they're going to build, but it's going to be very valuable for Mitzpe Ramon in the next few years.
You mean as a town, as a complex that is going to cover a very specific sector that is quite relevant. And I'm trying to understand, how do you see the connection between space and defense and cyber? You mentioned that you're managing that area, defense and cyber. How does space get into it? Because you were mentioning winery that is supposed to be on Mars. How are we looking at that? We're going to live there? Our agriculture is going to be in Mars, and we will be importing it into Earth. What's the plan?
What's the plan? I don't have a plan, but it looks like we're going there, right? Elon Musk and everyone else, and NASA, and the Artemis program around it. But I think that when we look at space, we have different vectors, right? So we have space that is related to defense, and we have pure space that is more commercial space, and we have space that is dual application space, which is also very agriculture companies, etc., that are related to space and can bring a solution to space, right? But in Israel, it's still an infant industry, and the budgets are not very big. So we need to bring more budget to this from the governmental side. I totally agree around it. Also, the Israeli Space Agency now, not sure how familiar you are with everything that is going on there, yes. But...
it's complicated.
Yes, I'm trying to say it in a very political way. But in general, I think it's a topic where we have a lot of technology that can be used and can be, we can sell it to other countries that are very interested. We also have like an agreement with, for example, Azerbaijan around space, and we need to create more agreements like that. But we have also other challenges around space, for example, that we don't have a space law in Israel, okay? And this thing, it doesn't really help us in creating more G2G, G2G contracts, yes, because we lack the space law.
So, if I go back to my question before, having an American piece of land in Israel, does it also help us in relation to the space law?
That's not the same.
We will be launching from an American. So, I feel that space is a very interesting topic that we're looking around, and obviously the desert here in Israel could be representative for that. Actually, I remember that I've been in a Pachacucha, and there was an architect presenting the first building that NASA is planned to use in Mars. That's an Israeli guy. It was amazing how he was speaking about it as if it's present, that people are going to live there, and the way that he's imagining the rooms division and the houses and everything, and how logistically it would be to deliver those houses to Mars. And I'm really trying to understand. I mean, we have so many challenges here on Earth, and then so much money is being invested in the discovery of space. Is it because we are already looking at what is going to happen to this planet, or we're looking for another place for some people to go to?
The population in Israel and around the world is, becoming very, like, too big, right? Although I heard that in Japan and in China, they almost don't, deliver babies. It's like less than one baby per family, right?
So in China, I don't know, but in Japan for
Yeah.
sure.
No, I think also in China. But I think it's just the evolvement of technology, right? And the way that people are looking at space and trying to reach space. And I think it's becoming easier to get there, right? And the the richest people on earth, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they became these crazy, it became their craziest projects, right? So I think not in a long time from now, hopefully we won't need to to pay a lot to go there, but it's definitely happening.
Yeah, but is it about traveling to space? Because I think that if we talk about it on the defense level, it's not necessarily about people being able to travel there. I mean, Antarctica is not yet discovered. We have a lot of conversations about Greenland. Those things probably have a lot of meanings on a strategic level, and that's why I think it's very interesting conversation that we have here, because for the first time you're representing the side of the government. Normally I talk with entrepreneurs and we discuss what are they doing with their company to help society, technology advance, and be a good example of what are we able to make here in Israel. And then you're mentioning space. We can also go a little bit further into the drones and unmanned vehicles, because you talked about lab and a physical space that different vehicles will be tested in Mitzpe Ramon. I speak a lot about the environmental conditions that vehicles should be tested in. Not to mention a specific company, but there was a company that was claiming to have a very successful drone, and then when there was wartime, one of the governments delivered those drones to the area, and they realized that those drones just cannot operate in that environment. because of weather, because of RF interference, because of GNSS denial. And what you're mentioning about Mitzpe Ramon preparing vehicles to be able to operate in space, I think there is also a layer in that way that is how to be able to operate in desertial areas. We're talking about the climate change. There would be areas that are becoming hotter with a lot of sand, and on the other hand, frozen lands that won't have any soil to place anything on. So if you could emphasize a little bit more on, you talked about 15 million shekels of investment in that lab. What those are the sizes of numbers that you invest in these types of projects? You're looking for big projects that are going to help more startups?
Yeah. So specifically around UAVs and drones, I work a lot around this topic, and I actually have a long process that I'm doing for the last 8 months or so, which is, I call it UAV as an economic growth engine for Israel. Okay. A part of it is around infrastructure. Okay. We also did a very big mapping of all the companies that we have around this area, and each company, what do they do, what's the technology. We have in the National Program for Economic Growth, we have a Monday board, okay, with over 10,000 high-tech
Which
companies.
is also an Israeli company.
Monday. Yeah. So we have information about over 10,000 high-tech companies in Israel in the cluster fields. Okay, so in the cluster that I'm leading, we have around 1,200 companies. Around 600 are cyber companies, and 600 are defense, military-oriented, space, homeland security, these kind of companies. But when we tried to map the UAV and drone companies, we saw that a lot of them, out of the 600, like a third, are related to drones and UAVs.
Wow.
Okay? And we have more different bodies and not tech companies, but enablers or service providers for these tech fields. And when we looked at the export from Sibat, okay, so they try to divide it by percentage, the export rate. So a big part of it in 2023 was around UAVs and drones, okay? And it kind of checked all of my boxes on why this is an economic growth engine for the state of Israel, because we have a technological superiority and we have a lot of companies. It is a little bit alarming that it's starting to be like a red ocean, okay? Because we have a lot of companies. Some of them do quite the same things, right? But some of them are not, okay? But these companies, they need infrastructure in order to thrive, okay? They need testing fields, they need an innovation center, they need a factory where they can,
produce
the drones. And we also want to decrease import from China, right? Also, a lot of
decrease import in general. I mean,
decrease.
Bring back production to
yes, but
to Israel.
Everyone is using DJI most of the time, and we try to increase export from Israel, decrease import, and also just improve איך אומרים? את הייצור כאילו בישראל.
Production.
Yeah, to improve production lines in Israel, okay? So we also invested last year in a production factory for drones and UAVs in Yerucham, in the south. And this is like a 42 million shekels project, okay? Out of it, we invested around 13. And for us, it checked all of our boxes. So it's in the south, it's in the periphery. We have a private entrepreneur that wants to do this, okay, that sees the value in it and sees the potential. It's going to be 5,000 square meters. So we're going to bring a lot of employees from the area. It's going to be used by potentially 200 companies. They're also in talks with the DDR&D on how to help,
Provide those products to the army.
DDR&D. So for us, it's a win, right? So we said, let's do this. Let's invest, right? But the government invests, and the National Program for Economic Growth invests only in those infrastructures that create impact on a lot of companies in Israel and can help them try to go to get to the market faster and help them with infrastructure that wasn't available in Israel.
And
so
200
far.
companies is not enough?
It is enough, but we also invest in other infrastructures that help other companies in the cluster fields.
Right. Production could be there useful for, as you say, more markets, because at the moment of creating jobs, people get new skills and then they're able to develop, let's say, engines.
Mm-hmm.
If we'll be able to develop engines here in Israel, those could be very useful to other markets in robotics, in machinery, vehicles. I don't know. Now I came back from the States. There's so many new American-made car companies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think in history they had so many companies that were developing cars in a very short time. And
right.
That leads me to my next question, and what comes up to my head is, as a government, are we focused on hardware as it seems right now, or it's going to the forte of the Israeli people and keeping it in the software side of things?
Okay, I'm going to say something which is going to sound a little bit weird, but the government is trying to listen to the ecosystem and what the ecosystem is doing, right? And how it's maturing and where the trends are going to, okay?
So the market is defining the
market is defining where the government is going to, okay?
Okay.
And
it really sounds strange.
yeah, the government is listening to the ecosystem, okay. Yeah, it's very innovative. But I think that we really lean towards listening to the ecosystem, and now we hear deep tech, okay, and we hear hardware, and we do hear software, right? Cyber is the king, right? But cyber doesn't need governmental help. Okay, they just need us not to interfere most of the time, right?
Yeah, more on regulation and enabling things.
But also not so much, okay? But it's harder when you work on around hardware, okay? So for that, you need factories, you need regulation, you need employees. You can't work from Rothschild Boulevard. And for that, the government can and tries to help. Yeah.
I understand. And can you give us like an example of a company that you see is going through that process, will move now to Yerucham? Just for those that don't know, so I could say Yerucham is the hub for drones in Israel. Project Naama that was taking place on drone deliveries and communication between different companies, sky management. That was the city that was chosen to lead that category in the market. And I just want you to go deeper as an example of a company that was supported by those grants that you're providing. Or
so it's not a company. We try to bring the ecosystem, but we are very realistic about bringing the companies to move to Yerucham. Okay, so we can offer services out of Yerucham. They can come to test their product in Yerucham. They don't have to move to Yerucham. And we can also do venture building in Yerucham and create more companies. But there are companies such as the Candu and Highlander, for example, that are almost there like every day. Because we have also a test site in Yerucham, which the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Transportation put a lot of millions of shekels to build it, and it's currently being built. Also, Netivei Ayalon, I'm trying to say it in English.
Yeah, Netivei alone is the company, right?
Yeah.
You mean the company that manages
Ayalon Highway.
Ayalon highways,
Yeah.
and I guess more projects that
Yeah.
are not necessarily related to the road, but so you have different partners pushing that. That's great that the economy is moving down south to
Yeah.
Yerucham, but then
But not only Yerucham. So, for example, we talked about Misper Ramon, but also, for example, in Be'er Sheva, okay? There was like a government resolution around the metropolitan of Be'er Sheva, and now the governmental resolution says that there are 10 million shekels there to bring defense companies to Be'er Sheva, okay? So we created this kind of forum of a few governmental offices, okay? And we try to think what will be the best way to use this money in order to bring the defense companies to Be'er Sheva, okay? So we also try to create this kind of a value chain in the Negev. So Mitzpe Ramon in space, Yerucham around drones and UAVs, Dimona it's more about robotics, Be'er Sheva it's going to be now around, I suggested, it's not, it wasn't decided yet, but around this kind of a test bed for defense companies, okay? Like a very...
the edge of urban and
yes,
desert zones.
Yes, yeah.
Like that's how I imagine.
Yeah. So you can see that there is a lot of weight being shifted towards the south of Israel, which makes sense because we can't only be around, Israeli Sarona and the Kiryat and Midtown. It doesn't make sense, right? And we saw a big shift of funds in the last 2 years because of the war around defense. So it's kind of, booming, and it needs to have other space, not just in Tel Aviv.
But like, what are the advantages if I'm now a founder of a defense company? We develop a drones that is very good to move into houses, so search and rescue operations also is something that we're able to do. What are the advantages if I move now to Be'er Sheva with my company? Like, what would we get there that we don't get in Rothschild?
I think it's going to cost you much less than in Rothschild, okay? I think that the cities are much more attentive to companies because they don't have 1,000, they have 100, right?
Yeah.
And
The tax, like the city taxes.
Yes, the city taxes, they're much less expensive, property taxes. And sometimes if you want to build like a factory or something like that, then it's much cheaper. You get all kinds of these benefits from the Ministry of Economy if it's in the periphery. So, I mean, it's quite easy to choose it.
So if I imagine like what I would expect as a founder, that's a kind of a WeWork for hardware, that there are machines. It's a lab. We can come there, we test our things, we can do their demos, which in many cases, you talked about the big three, they're the ones that manage the field test areas, and then it limits the small companies of being able to even show their technologies.
Right.
Because you'd always stop there. They tell you, okay, it costs 1,000,000 shekels a day if you want to use that space to show something exploding. Now, as an early stage startup, my total funding is 5 million.
Right.
So I say,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm not gonna do a demo.
Correct.
And then it really influences how far could these companies grow here in Israel. And that leads me to the next thing that I wanted to ask you. How much of that, I mean, in the past 2-3 years, we saw people, family owners that decided to move out of Israel. What are you doing in order to keep those technologies and brains to stay here in the defense field, because they can also do that in California.
Yeah,
What are you doing as a government to stop them from doing it?
it's a good question. We talk a lot. We talk about it a lot. Um, it's very hard to do something, right? Because it's their own decision, okay? And if they want to move to another place, I mean, there are other places with better conditions, right? To open a company, it's easier to work in these countries, right? But I think specifically in defense, it's different than other fields, like okay, because you, I mean, I won't say usually, but a lot of times, defense-related companies are being opened by, people who were in reserve duty, Zionists, people who love the country, and they care more about leaving the IP in Israel and, staying here and bringing jobs to Israeli families than registering their company abroad and opening a factory abroad or something like that. So I think maybe like, for example, in the health sector, it's harder, or in agriculture sector, it's harder, but in defense, it is relevant, but I think we have other problems.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, if I'm only focused on the exit that I will do with that company, I will go to where I can do exit faster and easier. And if I'm limited here by regulation or the prices of taking my vehicle to test in the field, so yes, it's a decision to make, and I understand everything that you're saying about Zionism, but at the end of the day, if in California there's someone that gives me the land to practice, the lab to develop, and I'm paying less taxes there, so yeah, maybe potentially I will sell it back to Israel. I hear sometimes from founders, I don't want to go around. I hear sometimes from founders that the layers of regulations are making it so complicated for early stage startups to develop things here in Israel, and the opportunity stays only for the big ones. So it's either I partner with the big primes, or I have to go abroad and sell my product. And then when I'm already selling abroad, people start asking, oh, if you're that Zionist, why you don't do it in Israel? But at the point that I needed the help, there were not enough opportunities and options to help me develop in the right way in Israel. And that what leads me to ask, what is going to be different in the next 2-3 years? We understand that the government is going to focus on that, listening to the ecosystem. So it's definitely, how do we make production cheaper? How do we make sure that things are being developed and produced here? I think in a strategic level, for many years, Israel was letting a lot of things to be exported. That really influenced the capabilities of developing hardware in here. And do you feel, as a country, we just got a decision without saying it out loud in words that we're getting back into production, or we're not yet there?
I think we said it in words, right? Even the prime minister said that we're going back to production, okay? That we need to be more self-reliant on production in Israel. I mean, Israel is not big, right? It's not the United States, but we do have areas where we can build more factories, and we can help. The government needs to help with funding in those specific places, and it's happening. I think one of the challenges when you are an entrepreneur is that you don't know what you don't know, right? And for me, when I was in the private sector, I didn't know what the government is doing, right? To provide help for entrepreneurs and for private companies. But I mean, it's also it's funny to say, but the government does quite a lot, okay, to help companies, but they don't know it. And I think one of the ways is to create these bridges, right, of connections between the government and the private sector. And this is one of the reasons why the National Program for Economic Growth was created, to provide this help. Okay, I do hear a lot about regulation. Okay, and about the fact that they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's the first what's the process around it. They don't know what's the first thing that they need to do. They don't know who to go. They don't know if they need, an advocate to do that. But maybe one of the ways we can help is to create more visibility around these things, because, I mean, they are very structured processes, okay? But the thing is that maybe they are not visible to the private sector enough.
So
I'm hearing you.
yeah,
I'm
those
listening.
those bridges are. I mean, I'm receiving on a newsletter something. It's maybe part of what you're doing, but maybe the founders and entrepreneurs that are listening to us don't know about it. I get like every quarter a list of individuals that the Ministry of Economy is helping Israeli startups to present to German representatives, to present to US representatives, to present to Indian representatives, and that's, I feel, one of the bridges that you were talking about. But then what I've seen that is very different, again, I'm going back to the ground, the soil that we actually need, is in the US, a company told me, we want to show you this and this technology. The next day, they were able to go to a place, choose where to do it, on what height they're going to fly it, what are they going to show me, and everything was super simple. Now, maybe here, the challenge is that the sky is owned by the army. If you can talk a little bit about that and how do you manage in between those spaces, because Yerucham is in the Negev. You were talking about moving the industry down to the Negev, but also the army is moving down to the Negev.
Right.
The skies are not as open. And I really connect to what you said before. Like maybe for me, looking at the American way of doing things, it looks like something very simple, not imagining that the size of Israel is not even the size of New Jersey. And we need to be creative, as always, on how do we make those layers. So maybe part of Project Naama was to actually create credibility for the Air Force that different vehicles, if they are in pilot or if they are in active missions, could operate together in the same skies.
That's why we need airways.
Exactly. I didn't want to do a build up for one company, but to do sky management for vehicles in low altitudes, that's definitely going to be the busiest layer of the skies. And I mean, I want to get into the management part of things in the cluster that you're managing. How much or how effective is the feedback that you would get? You were mentioning a lot of coffees, meeting different startups. How much that feedback then goes up in the stairs of the Knesset and they say, okay, we get what the ecosystem have just said, but we have so many other things to take care of right now.
Right.
Let's keep it for 2027.
That's a good question. You have good questions. So, first of all, I think I always go by the sentence, תזמון זה עניין של timing. Okay? We are in an election year. Okay? Last year and 2 years ago, I think sometimes it was easier and sometimes it was harder, right? But this year is quite different. Okay? The government is listening, but I think I need to think of a very
No,
political way
I'm not trying to make you the representative of the government. Of course,
to say it, but
you are the bridge, as you mentioned.
yes, I think that sometimes it's not the right time to do things, okay? But we hear the ecosystem and we try to build plans that might not fit right now, but they might fit in a few months from now, okay? Because sometimes the government is unable to listen at the moment, or there is no budget at the moment, but we hear that it's important, okay? Sometimes we don't need a budget. Sometimes it's just how effective is the communication between different governmental offices, okay? So it really depends on what is the issue, how important it is, how, if we have a champion in other offices, okay, that's also important. And at the end,
What do you mean a champion?
like a champion is like one person that also thinks that this initiative is very important and is also pushing it from the other office.
Okay, so
Okay,
it's
so he's
the right partner. Let's
yes,
go.
so he's my champion. Okay, a champion, it comes from the private sector, right? In sales and business
Yeah,
development.
it's probably in the business development, but that would be the person of interest.
Yeah, like the person of interest that also wants to push it. Okay, and at the end, sometimes it's even the actual minister, how important it is to him or not. Okay, and if it's the right timing for it or not. So
There's so many stars that need to align. If we talked about space before,
so you have politics and you have professionalism, and it's kind of, you need to work in those areas together, and sometimes it's hard to align between the both, okay? But I think for me, what's very, the topics that are very important to me, I try to push them as hard as I can. And I can say that Nir Barkat, the Minister of Economy, I meet him, I think, every 3 weeks, something like that. And first of all, he's a very good listener, okay? He wants to hear what the ecosystem has to say. And he also comes from the private sector, okay?
I didn't want to get into politicians and stuff. You said that we are in a politics here, but I wanted to mention that he comes from the private sector to government.
From Checkpoint. And I think he looks at Israel as a company, okay, that he wants to grow, and he looks at the ROI, and it's the way of he thinks, okay, the way that he's thinking. And I don't know how other ministers are thinking because I've only worked with him, but there is a long road, right, from listening to what we try to say until something is happening, okay?
Yeah.
When you work at the government.
It's not a startup. He looks at it as a company, not as a startup.
Right. No, like an enterprise company.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the end, we have successes. Okay. We succeed. Not in everything. But, when I'll finish my role as the Defense and Cyber Cluster Manager, I think that I will be able to say, okay, I made an impact for the ecosystem, right? I created infrastructure that helped a lot of companies grow their businesses faster. I connected them to very important initiatives around the world. So these kind of things that actually it makes it easier for me to work at the public sector, which is not always easy. Yeah. But at the end, when we look at successes, I think that it's the National Program for Economic Growth. I think it's a good project. Okay, because it's a project, right? It will end one time. But we listen to the ecosystem, and at least I can say that we try our best to help it. And if you will talk to the ecosystem, I'm sure you will find people that will say, "What? They didn't help me at all," right? But we helped over 2,000 companies. We funded their conventions and conferences, okay, their flight tickets, right? It makes an impact.
and to measure it, you can say, okay, they participated in this conference, they have a new client,
Yeah,
that's worth a lot of money
a lot
for
of
the
money.
company, and also a lot of coverage for an Israeli company.
Right.
Israel gets also some benefit from that.
And also for the end goal of the Ministry of Economy to get to $1 trillion in export by 2045.
I wanted to speak about management in your cluster. Um, because, as you might know, in our field, which is mostly male oriented, defense
Yeah.
tech. If you've noticed, it's mostly male oriented.
Yeah.
I can explain also one of the reasons, but
Of
that's
course,
not
you're a man.
mansplaining. No, actually, the amount of people in the army that
Yeah.
work in those areas are more men than women. I
Right.
won't say only men.
Yeah.
And for that, we can see also growing numbers of entrepreneurs that are women. How much do you work on that, look into it, meeting teams and saying, hey, I want, or I think this professional lady could be a very useful part in your growth? And
Yeah.
how do you feel your position is coming as a woman into the room?
Okay, so I'm a woman born and raised, right? That's what I'm used to. And I think that also throughout my career, I've been working in kind of a male-oriented environment, right? In sports, high tech. I'm also one part of a triplet. So
Wow.
I have two
You
brothers.
see, these are the type of things that we want to talk about.
Yeah, you can ask me 1 hour how is it to be one part of a triplet, but I'm one part of a triplet, and I have two brothers, so it's always been like that around me, right? And I think sometimes it's an advantage to be a woman in these kind of places, and also, I can tell you, I work with the highest tiers, right? With the CEOs and the VPs, and these kind of tiers. Individuals, yes. And for me, it's very important to promote women in this field, okay? I'm also a part of the Dvorah Forum, which is the National Security Forum for women in those fields. And they also have an advisory board for the cluster that I created. And out of 10 people who are very top tier people in the defense industry in Israel, I have 7 women. So, and for me, it wasn't challenging, right? Because it's just...
It wasn't challenging to find them, or
It
it wasn't
wasn't
challenging to
challenging
define why you need an advisory board?
No, I knew I needed an advisory board, but it wasn't challenging for me to find them because you just need to open your eyes. Okay? They are there. They are not a lot. Okay? We need to work a little bit harder on promoting women in this field. But the women that are in this field, they are very successful. They are very intelligent. I have, for example, Michal Mor. She is the CEO of Smart Shooter. I have Miriam Stilman. She's the partner in Tal Ventures who invests in deep tech and defense companies.
Yeah.
Mali Marton from ELTA. I have magnificent women. And they're just, when I told them, I want you to come to my advisory board, they said, sure, why not? And for me, it's funny because I have other team members that come to my advisory board, okay? Sometimes just to listen, to learn from it. And they say, in other advisory boards, like in the health sector and the agriculture sector, it's mostly male. And in the defense and cyber cluster advisory board, which is mostly women, you get the job done, You don't just talk. You go, you do this 2-hour session, and it's meaningful, right? So I think for me, and also I'm a mother for 3 daughters. So for me, it's also important, like in a very odd way, to show my kids how important it is to promote women. And if they will ask me, I will do that all over again. And I think it's at the end, it's an advantage because at the end, it's how you talk to people and how you create connections. And sometimes to be a woman or two out of 10, it's much better than to be the eighth man in the room.
Never thought about it. I'm born and raised as a man.
Yeah.
And I've been the number 8 in the room. I guess I felt very important being the number 8. But
they always ask me for my opinion.
yeah,
And sometimes when you're not a man, they don't ask you because you might just say it, right? But if you're a woman, you sometimes don't talk. I talk, okay? Sometimes
I think
women don't
that's
talk.
you're already going into attitude. When you mentioned your 3 daughters, think more than letting them learn and see their mother as a powerful woman. It's also about what's their attitude, what's their responsibility, and why it's important that they would say what they think, and that they would learn and do research in order to speak and say things that are relevant to the topic. Because I feel that you talked about the advisory board. That's the beginning. Now it's how you and those 7 women that are sitting in the room would be able to help and bring more women into that space. And that's a question that, of course, I can ask you because you're a woman. Because if I would just decide why it's this way or another, no one could confirm it for me. And I'm actually looking for your confirmation or disconfirmation about it. Are you seeing an increasing number of women being part of that industry in the next 5 years?
I think that in high tech it's easier, okay? In health it's easier. In other sectors it's much easier.
Why? Because in defense we're more in the field?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of women that are doing...
most of the companies that were established during the war came from reserve duty, people.
Right.
Most of the reserve duty, are men, okay? So you create this kind of ecosystem, which is mostly mainly dominated, okay? So I think, I know that, for example, in the IAI, in the Israeli
Air Force.
in the בתעשייה האווירית.
Sorry.
Israeli aviation industry, it's very important for them to promote women, okay? So what I know, at least I know about them, okay? I don't know what's it like in Rafael, and I try not to get myself complicated in saying things. But I think that it's very important for the big 3 companies to promote that because they have like 90% of the employees or 80% of the employees around defense go to them.
Yeah.
Okay? But I think
they're also enterprises. It's not startups.
Yeah, but I think it's also important to create accelerator programs or incubation programs or venture building programs that has to include women. And also, part of what we do in the Dvorah Forum is that we created a defense tech group, okay, which includes amazing women from INSS and the cyber industry and all these kind of women. And we currently try to create programs for the next generation of defense women, but it's a challenge. And we also try to get in touch with other kinds of women associated forums from around the world to help us amplify the process. And
you mean women veterans or not necessarily related to...
No, not necessarily. Defense. But for example, German women from the defense industry. And we try to see how we can work together in order to promote more women in these industries together.
That's great to hear. And I want to give as an example Hamotal Meridor from Kela, that she was previously the CEO of Palantir. So she was kind of, with her skills, uh, getting to the point that now many men and women are looking at her as an example of how to do it in defense. Is there like a plan to bring people like Hamotal in order to learn from them what was their journey to get to that point, and then say, okay, if we as again, I'm always putting you in the position of the government, but you're representing a very specific ministry, taking Hamotal as an example and saying, okay, the next generation, we want 50 new Hamotals that will lead the defense tech industry. How does it going to look like? It needs to start in education. It continues in women serving in active operational units. For example, the unit that I come from, half men, half women, or maybe even more women right now, is what I'm seeing when I come for reserves. I don't see them going to start companies. I don't know to tell why, but I don't see them starting companies. They might study software engineering and work for defense technology companies. What you as Elinor, as an individual, now not representing any government or ministry, think we should do in order to see more women leading companies in the defense space?
Wow, I actually told my husband that if out of the three girls that I have, if they will have like a CEO position, one of them, then for me it's a success, right? And I'm not a CEO of any company yet, okay? But it is challenging to be a woman, okay? I mean, you have your fertility years, and I mean, there's no way out of it, right? And it's very challenging to be a woman and to become a mother and to hold important position, meaningful positions, and also to be an important part at home, okay? But at the end, yeah, my daughter is actually calling me right now again. סליחה, one second. את רוצה 9 nuggets וצ'יפ? I really think it starts in education at a very early age, and from studying STEM education, but sometimes it's just luck, but it's a lot of hard work, and at the end it's also how you got educated at home. So I think it really starts from there. I will try to do my best with my kids. But I think it's also an Israeli thing, right? So it's all around Israel, and you need to create an atmosphere that is more supportive for women, okay? In Israel,
What
when
does
you
it mean?
work at high tech, you work, like long hours, and you need to be at the office, and I'm in different groups, right? And all these groups say pretty much the same thing. Like, I came from maternity leave, and now how do I do that, right? How can I be with my baby, and how can I be this successful employee at, I don't know, Meta or Google or wherever, right? So it's a challenge, it's a process, but at the end, the kids grow up, and at the end, you stay yourself at the age of, I don't know, 45 or 50, and you need to see what you accomplished, right? So you need to create a balance. So I think part of it's your family and how what's the atmosphere around it, and how you create this kind of success inside your family, and babysitters and grandmothers and all this help. But it's also an Israeli thing. I think that in Israel you need to create a more supportive environment for women, so it will be easier for us to promote ourselves and end up at the CEO seat.
Okay, that's a very full answer about that. And I mean, here in Tel Aviv, there are already kindergartens for the dogs. so that people could work more.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. As you said, it's not even about a man or a woman. It's people that want to be more hours at work or to go to Pilates after work, but they still have a responsibility for a dog. Again, I'm connecting between the dog and a kid. Maybe
Yeah, it's
some
because
people
you
would,
don't have kids.
right. Maybe it's some people would look at it differently. For me, it's a responsibility.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's a responsibility. To give birth, you don't need a license, and to adopt a dog, neither.
Right.
But then you have a responsibility
Still
for.
not the same, but okay.
You still have a responsibility
Right.
about
Yeah.
an individual that has their own
Needs.
needs, wills,
Yes.
and then it becomes claims to their mother
Right.
or father. And
What about my McDonald's order, Mom?
yeah, it's like not even how's your day, how do you feel,
Sometimes.
where
Yeah.
are you at,
Yeah.
my McDonald's order, what's the number, mom. And sometimes you feel, okay, I'm working all day and then I'm still working for these small,
Yeah. Second shift.
yeah, it's making it harder. As you said, I still don't have kids, but I'm for sure, or maybe it's the perspective that I see, the way of managing the house. Because we had a lot of hours with my mom, because she loved being with us at home.
Okay.
And my father was working a lot of hours,
Yeah.
so I didn't have too much time with my father. Is it necessarily the mother that needs to be at home in order to grow your daughters to be a CEO? Or maybe if the father
Don't
is
know
at
if my
home,
husband is listening.
I will make sure to send him the link.
I think it's both. I think it's a balance. Okay. I think it's a balance on a daily, on a day-to-day basis. Okay. When I came home on Thursday from Mitzpe Ramon, I came home at 9 p.m. Okay, and my husband was there with the kids, picking them from kindergarten.
He was sleeping and they were awake.
No. No. He's doing a great job. And he's also a CEO of a company, right? So
Yeah.
it's not easy. We're both very career oriented. But I think that it doesn't necessarily the amount of time you spend with them, but the quality inside, in the time that you spend with them. So when I'm with them, I try, my husband will probably laugh, but I try not to be a lot with my mobile phone. Okay.
Yeah.
And
but it's also part of your work to be
Yes.
attentive and
Right. Yeah. It's never ending. Right. But at the end, I always try to think, because they're small, right? They're 9, 4.5, and 6. I try to think, okay, so when they will be older and they will have, will be a dinner time, right? I don't want them to be with their mobile phone. I want them to listen. I want them to talk. So every day is like trying to teach them how to behave and communicate. And now is the time, right? Because when they're older, they're already grown-ups. They have their own opinions. They know they're managing themselves. So if you give a good example, that's what's important. And with the time I have, I try to give them a good example.
yeah, I think it's definitely, if there's a place to get good examples on how hard people work, is here in Israel. I mean, the amount of hours, yeah, there are a lot of jokes about the high-tech scene that.
It's not a joke. It's not funny.
No, there's kindergarten for the dogs and kindergarten for the kids, and just for you to stay as many hours as you can in the office,
Yeah.
so that the corporate would enjoy your time making more money for the company. And I feel that I can maybe a little bit imagine us getting back that opportunity as a country to produce things, to give much to the periphery. I'm also working in the fashion industry. There was a very,
You work at the fashion industry?
yes,
Wow, what do you do?
a startup um, helping people with disabilities to shop online.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I started from making clothes for people with disabilities, and then I realized that, okay, the industry here is gone. Like, it's very hard to find people that would be able to make clothes in Israel. I had an imagination after making the outfits for the Israeli Paralympic delegation to Tokyo that I want to bring back those capabilities of people that were working in Arad and Dimona in textile.
Yeah.
But suddenly I realized that they had to adapt themselves to something new and move on, because in this country you need to move. Okay, what's the field that is now calling the investments and the attention? That's where I will invest my time and knowledge. And I can imagine, as of concluding this conversation, that in 5 years from now we will have actually factories that are developing here things for the industry of drones, robots, and I think it's not only our responsibility as individuals and citizens, is also to understand what does it actually mean for the uh, population of the Israeli country. I mean, the gap between very high-tech technologies and very low-tech individuals that exist today could not stay that way. It only grows the gap between us individuals living here, and of course that also influences on how do we see each other and the perception that we have on other people. So I want to close with that. If you can give us your thought on how the next years are going to look like in respective to defense and cyber here in Israel. We had few years that it was a little bit challenging um, to present what Israel is actually doing to the world. But now we kind of got an opportunity to get back on the stage and speak out loud about what we have been doing since 1948 and what we're up to do for the next years to come.
First of all, I think it looks very promising. Okay? Like the last 2 years have been one hell of a ride. Okay? I think that the defense ecosystem is blooming. I see the numbers for other sectors. Okay? Like, I don't want like to be like, it's, it's the real deal. Okay? We also see from the geopolitical view the budgets of other countries, right, around defense are increasing. And they want the technological superiority of Israel. If it's on the surface, if it's below the surface, at the end we see the export numbers. So I think it's the right industry to be in. We have a lot of challenges. If it's regulation, if it's human capital, if it's where to register your company. But at the end, if I would need to put my money, I would put it on the Israeli defense ecosystem. We see a lot of different initiatives that understood the momentum and are trying to help. If it's startups, if it's with venture building, if it's more investments, or if it's co-development programs, design partnership programs. I think now is just a time to grab it, and move forward. So, I mean, if you want to conclude this with one sentence, I guess that we're on a roll, right? And we just need the government to push it a little bit further, but definitely on the right way.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your personal story, the McDonald's order that you had to make today, um, your job working for that ecosystem to actually be able to export those innovative and creative ideas that were either born as part of people serving in reserves in the past 2 to 3 years, or knowledge of individuals that came from other sectors into the defense tech industry And hopefully we can hear about many more stories that grew up in Israel.
More women
More
in this
women
industry.
in defense, cyber, and space. Thank you very much.
Amen.
And until the next time.
Thank you.